everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our first segment of Read the Regs. Tonight, we are reading the first segment of the adult use regulations. We're going to hit some bullet points. This is a community adventure with Annette from Audubon Hayes, Beck from Mary Says NY, and Nicole from New York Small Pharma. Nicole is going to be popping on later because she's actually part of the mentorship program. So we will be uploading this to all of our respective channels. I want to bring up our guests. Here is Annette. Here is Beck. Welcome, ladies. How are you this evening?
Good. Glad to be here and excited to get through these regs. Yes, 280 pages.
And we won't be reading all of them.
No, thank God. We're not reading through them.
Yeah, we are not.
Yeah, we are not reading through them, but how do you call it? So let's say what we're doing. I have this expression that it says, we're going to tell them what we're going to tell them. We're going to tell them, and then we're going to tell them what we told them. So we make sure that we hit everything. So why we're doing this is so that if you are a potential applicant, if you are curious, if you're a community leader like myself, I have no intention today on applying, but I think that, I want to be a resource. And I feel the same thing. Beck and Annette are also community leaders. So it's a matter of being aware, right? Knowing what's going on so that you could be a resource. Is that fair?
100%.
Okay, cool. And why is everybody so quiet? What's going on?
I'm talking a lot later, so
okay. Yeah.
I'll reserve my energy.
Okay, I'm like, what's going on? Okay, so what we're doing today, we are going over 3 sections. Section 120, which is the basic application part. Section 121, which is social equity. And then we're doing section 133, which is enforcement. Is that right? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, that's correct. But we're going to start with enforcement, though, because that's kind of like our smaller section.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
And the commentaries due February 9th. So we figured we would start there because it's a little bit more urgent than the rest of the commentary that's due February 13th.
Right. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so we have leisurely 4 days in between to think about the 280-page regs.
And here's what I will say. Like, I swear I have undiagnosed ADHD because I don't read like that. Anything more than like a magazine article, I'm done. So I personally invested in Speechify, where you literally upload the PDF and it reads it to you. Now, in truth, it sounds like the movie phone guy. I don't know if I'm dating myself to remember who that guy is, but it allowed me to go through it at my pace and really hit it. So if anyone is like myself and could use a little assistance, because they are important and you do want to read them, we're going to go over them, but we're definitely not going to line by line them. And then we'll do deeper dives once we get into the particular licenses, so on and so forth. And we're going to upload them to all of our respective channels, so you'll have them. So if anyone wants to chime in anything, because I could talk.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. And I think it's important that you're like calling out that people learn differently. And so it's a good tool to hear it audible,
Yeah.
And so, but with part 133, the violations hearing and enforcement section, this was a section that was adopted on the last OCM meeting where they announced the card licenses previous to last meeting. And they adopted these as an emergency proceeding. And so these are actually in effect right now. And there's 39 pages of a lot of talk of enforcement and what happens if you are caught in violation of the regulations. I think before we started the conversation today, Beck brought up how was were these put into place to enforce what was happening all over the city? Yes, they were, because there's a lot of activity in the city that we all know is illegal, but many New Yorkers don't. So I think it's good that they're in place, but they are very intense around policing. And so I want to call that out, that folks should read it. And we should comment on that because, marijuana or cannabis, whatever, it's called in the MRTA and in the regulations, it's called both, by the way.
Yeah.
We should speak to that because it's been decriminalized. So to see the heavy use of police all over the regs is a little bit heavy-handed, I think. And so, I'd encourage folks to read it. And then there's this notion of the cease and desist and the debarments. And they're good questions there, right? Like if somebody is found to receive a cease and desist, does that debar them? Will that lead to debarment? I think there's...
And debarment meaning, is that banning you from ever getting a license again?
Debarment means you're done.
Yeah.
like when you're debarred in law.
Yeah. Because we were on a call earlier and there was discussion around, and I think a lot of people have different feelings about this. Like there's these stores that are popping up feel very different than traditional legacy operators. Legacy operators keep their business quiet. They operate word of mouth. You have to be vetted. You have to know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. And these are just popping up on the middle of Broadway, showing up on the news. Were they, people are asking, are they from our communities? Are they selling? What are they selling? These products look labeled and tested and real, but we don't know. So there's those kind of questions. And then, so is it dangerous? Is it then for the people who are getting licenses, is it fair? And Annette pointed out that on the call that we were on earlier, Dashita Dawson talked about, everybody should have the opportunity to be rehabilitated. So, is that a situation? Will there be a way to sort of cure your situation, comply with the law? You're muted, Tanya.
Sorry. It does say it in the regs that you have the option to cure if you have a violation, if you infringed on the regulations regarding your licensing. It does say that there is a remedy to cure. There's usually a time frame that you have to adhere by, and provide supporting information to say that you were, maybe there was an incorrectness there. You know what I mean? But it is the shortest of the regs. In my Speechify, it's 35 minutes, just so you know. which it would take me 5 days, legit 5 days, if I had to read it myself. So I was like, thank you, Speechify, 35 minutes. So,
yeah.
All right. So, and I just wanted to shout her out since she's not here. I'm going to add something to the stream real quick. On Nicole, New York Small Pharma, they have copies of the regs. And they actually have where you can go and find the regs is actually here. You go to their main page under share your voice and timetable. They have all the regulations under this regulations tab. So if you don't have the regs and you want a PDF copy, you can go to the New York Small Pharma website and you can get all the information you need. We'll drop that up a little later as well. So
the truth is that's probably easier than navigating the OCM website. Shout out to the OCM website. You got some more.
Shout out to the OCM website.
Wow.
So welcome knowledge there. You just have to find it.
Yeah, it's all there. You just have to I don't know, navigate their interesting navigation system. So, but
exactly.
I think that leads us nicely into section 120.
Yep.
You ready to rumble? So section 120. Oh, I love it. I love it.
I was messing with it earlier. Sorry. Okay, there we are.
No, all good. Section 120, pretty hefty section because it talks about license types, the application criteria, fees for the assorted license types, the applications, withdrawals, denials, renewals, reapplication after loss of license or denial is also included in this section. It addresses the process for updating any information associated with a license, as well as the process for curing missing information and errors on a license application. So like firsthand, and we've seen a lot of card licensees go through this. They've had and I think this is really good. And this shows really good faith effort on the part of the OCM. Folks have had every opportunity to cure things on their applications. Like I've been like, wow, that's pretty generous. They're reaching out saying you're missing this, or, can you clarify this? So, I mean, I think that's a good like highlight for OCM. There's 9 license types. And we just gave the high level descriptions today because as we do the other 3 series that are coming up, hello, Asia. As we do the other 3 series that are coming up, we are going to break down these license types and get deeper. And some of them are very particular. And like, for example, the cultivation licenses, which Nicole is going to present. Nicole, who's our partner in this series. It's pretty intense in terms of like the combinations and the matrices of cultivation licenses you can acquire, meaning indoor versus outdoor, and etc. So a cultivator license is growing, cloning, harvesting, drying, curing, grading, trimming. These are OCM definitions from an OCM deck. So I pulled them straight from the horse's mouth. Nursery is only clones, immature plant seeds, and other agricultural products. Processor could be extracts, concentrated cannabis, and/or compounds, or manufacturers. Distributor is wholesale sale to dispensary, on-site consumption or delivery service. So that's interesting because that's an interesting definition. Retail dispensary sells cannabis products directly to customers. Pretty straightforward. Delivery, bringing cannabis products directly to consumers. On-site consumption sells directly to consumers for use on site at the location, like a bar. Adult use cooperative is a democratically controlled. They can cultivate, process, distribute, but they can't sell directly to consumers. So they're more B2B or business to business. And then micro business could be a cultivator, a processor, distributor, a retailer. No person can own more than 1 license. This is the only license type that New York considers to be vertically integrated, meaning there's more than one kind of license structure in there. Doesn't mean multiple licenses. It just means that there's multiple functions a micro business can have. Do you guys want to chime in on any of those, or like any clarification on any of it, or things that you're thinking about?
I'm good. I think when we deeper dive, I'll have a ton of questions, but higher level, I think I'm good. How about you, Beck?
Yeah. Same.
All right.
I
And
can
I
get
wanted
into
to
it.
say really briefly, if anyone has comments, just drop them in the chat. We can see them. Someone had a question: which category does edibles fall in? That's processing, if I'm not mistaken. Just co-sign with me. It would be the processing license, which would be we're going to cover Thursday, right? Okay. Okay, cool. Keep going. Sorry to interrupt.
No, all good. I'm like trying to figure out where the chat is.
I don't know if you can see it. I
So
can
we
see
can't
it, and
see
if
the
there's
chat. Okay, all right. We can only see
but
our back.
once people comment, I can drop it on the screen, like Asia, who says thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Asia.
So
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll definitely drop them on the screen. So if you have them, put them in the chat, and we will be good to go. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
I definitely want to encourage folks to ask questions, or if they need clarification on something that we're saying. Can you elaborate and compare between micro license and processor license? Well, I mean, I'm going to say the most high level is micro license. Like I said, could be a combination of businesses. So for example, a micro license could be compared to like a craft brewery. Like, so somewhere where they make beer and they consume the beer, they package the beer, people could walk away with the beer, right? A processor is more like, I'm going to make your beer for you and label it and ship it out, send it out to you. And that's what the processor, or like fill the beer bottles for you, label them that kind of thing.
But you're with the processor, you're sending it to the store. You're not sending it to the customer.
You're not sending direct to consumer. And also a processor could also be a cultivator. So that makes it a little bit more complicated as well, because there's conditional cultivators right now that can conditionally process.
Exactly. So there's some questions about really specific to micro, and I want to hit those. But we're going to do a deep dive. I just would love to stick to this question. So there's a question on white labeling. And then laboratories. Okay, so for labs, that's a whole separate set of regs. Head over to Nicole's, head over to Nicole's website, New York Small Pharma, and pull those regs down. I think the period for that is very soon, right? Is that the 31st? Am I?
Yeah, that's coming up like next week or in a couple days.
So
I think you're right. I think it's the 31st.
Okay, cool. All right. So let's jump back in.
All right. So, section 120 also addresses application criteria, the fees for assorted license types, license applications, withdrawals, denials, renewals, reapplication. If you get denied for a license, you can reapply. It's not just one shot and you're done. You can always try again. Only the fees are non-refundable. So really important to note there. Again, it's a very detailed section, and if you're planning to be an applicant for licensure, it's recommended that you comment on this section. This is where you might want to focus. Like when I read the regs, and I'm sure Beck, Tanya, we think about, okay, if I were to do this, what would some of my obstacles be with these rules right now?
Right.
Like as an example for future, if you're looking at a micro business license, you might want to comment on the GMP standards, right? Like the standards for production. Maybe we don't want them to be as rigid as in a regular manufacturing place. So just an example. Going back to application fees, really detailed, but the things I want to kind of highlight, I think you can move this. Right here. If the applicant qualifies as a social and economic equity applicant as set forth in section 121.2, then a 50% reduction, waiver, or deferred fee. Really important to highlight this, because one of the things I keep hearing as feedback is like when people see the numbers, they're like, we don't want to pay that. That's so expensive. But there is an actual clause in the regulation. Any other supplemental reduction, waiver, or deferred fee as determined by the board for the purposes of providing financial assistance to an applicant who demonstrates specific needs. So you could either be a social economic equity applicant, or you could have some serious financial need, and you could potentially get waivers according to these regulations. So I think a comment, we can make positive comments too, like, yay, OCM, thanks for giving the option to have a sliding scale, or for people to plead their case on not paying these fees, because I think that's been a major call out. And it's an obstacle too. Like some of the fees are pricey.
And I think too, like just one thing that the OCM is really asking for is not just commenting and saying like, I don't like this fee, or I don't like this regulation about this license type. Is if you have ideas, so I don't like this, and then why? Like what would be easier? Like, or if it has to be $2,000, like, then can I don't know, make a payment plan, like whatever the solution. So
it's 100%. Absolutely. I the best way.
What you don't like, why you don't like it, and what would make you happier?
What's the solution?
What's a good solution?
Yeah, and that is so huge, because in reality, no one wants to be told. You don't want to be told just your faults, or where you did wrong. So when we did the home cultivation regs, it was like, I see that you stated this. I'm interpreting it as this. If I'm correct, I'd like to offer this as a suggestion. You know what I mean? I don't think people should also expect, they're going to get a lot of comments on these. So I don't know if you're going to expect the feedback that you might want, but it's your input is going to be registered 100%. So it's a matter of sending that email. that email needs to be sent.
Yeah,
So,
it's on the record.
Yeah, I mean, and once it's on the record, they have to review that comment. So, like, one of the things that, I'll call out is like packaging. They received 700 comments. That doesn't seem like a lot, but 700 was a lot to them because they had to go in and cure each comment and say, like, okay, yes, we're going to do something. No, we're not going to do something. And actually, the packaging guidelines did change because of commentary. So that's a good positive story about how commentary can change things.
Yeah.
Now there have been some other things where they were like, no, we're not changing anything, like the card license.
Shout out to the card licenses.
Shout out to card license commentary because nothing changed there. but I think that is also relevant to the license type. This was an additional license type. It was an additional program to the MRTA. It was kind of like a surprise to everyone, and so I think there's some like grace we could give OCM for that. Under cultivation and nursery fees, we're not going to discuss the cultivation and nursery fees. You see it here because they're very intricate depending on square footage, mixed use lighting, indoor, outdoor, and so I'm going to leave that to Nicole, who's our cultivation person.
Specialist. Yeah, and she's really meticulous about her work, so that's gonna
take you through
you're gonna be good.
Yes,
you're gonna be good. I'm looking for that email now, Irma. I'm looking for it's for regulations at
ocm.ny.gov. Yeah. So adult use processor for extraction, infusing, blending, packaging, labeling, and branding is $7,000 per premise. And notice that that's for extraction, right? So, and the next level does not include extraction. It's infusing, blending, and packaging, and labeling, and branding, and that's $4,000. You just moved that too quickly.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought
okay.
You were ahead. I'm sorry.
It's okay. And then we have adult use processor, which is packaging, labeling, and branding, including the exclusive performance of white labeling agreements. So this is less, and it's $2,000 per processing premise, unless applying as a tier 1 or tier 2 cultivator. Remember what I said, you could be a cultivator and a processor, and then in that case, you see my little note, tricky. In that case, it's $500 additional for the processing. A co-op processor is going to be $5,000, so you can have co-op processors, which is that's cool. Adult use distributors, $7,000 per premise. Co-op distributors are $3,500. Retail dispensaries are $7,000, which I think is, wow, that's kind of we should comment on that.
What's that?
I think we should comment on that $7,000 because there's also additional fees that retail dispensaries will have to pay in the year after they do business that are upwards of millions. So that's a section that I would, and I think Becca's going to break that down eventually, but that's a section where I would pay close attention to the fees. Microbusinesses $4,500, and then delivery $4,500. Becca, I thought I saw you talking. Did you want to get in there?
Oh, no, I just said we'll be really getting in there on Thursday for about the retail and
I'm excited for that.
I have this note about a ROND. I was trying to look up what that stood for. Does anyone know? I think you have to go back. ROND, ROND. It's I don't have it in the notes here.
Okay.
Hold on.
So someone had a question we want to address. This would fall more under, I guess, enforcement, but I don't know. It doesn't fall under these regs.
These wouldn't fall under the enforcement regulations. No. This is more like the law enforcement and
under MRTA personally. And I know right now there are no tests that will test cannabis through how do you call it? Well, you know what I'm trying to say. I have not been able to find my words today. Through a breathalyzer.
No breathalyzer. There's no formal test for
right.
that, right?
It literally, and right now, the smell of odor in your car, it's a distinguishing factor between burnt cannabis and just having your cannabis in your car. You know what I mean? So we can definitely circle back to the MRTA for that. And I know who that is. You can always DM me. Thank you, Irma, for finding my words for me. And here's a response. Ron is what Etain and the ROs
Yeah,
are.
thank you. Yeah, and so
Okay.
thanks, Jess. Those licensing fees are a lot steeper, rightfully so.
Yeah. You know, so
It's proportionate to like your.
and I'm wondering if these fees are comparable to the liquor authority fees. I don't know what they are.
It's a good question. I
You
mean, I
know,
don't know what they are. We'd have to look in.
and listen, I'm going to play devil's advocate. I know 7,000 is a hefty fee. I don't have a random $7,000 sitting in my pocket.
But you would be social equity and you could apply for a waiver.
That's the first part, right? That's the first part. And I was literally born in a record store, and I'm not even kidding, literally. My parents owned a record store, and that retail is no joke. So that's a heavy license. So all right, let's move on. Let's move on. Where are we at now? Call
So
out.
just some little call outs and curiosities I called in. Oh, someone said my beer and wine license was about $6,000.
So it's comparable.
It's comparable. Maybe and maybe that's where they pulled the number from.
It's possible. It's possible.
In section 120.1, it calls out limitations and factors for licenses such as sustainability, public health and safety, social and economic equity factors. And I wrote, this seems a little vague. I get sustainability but I would like to see more explanation under this, because I think we want to have like some more meat here for criteria. Social and economic equity factors sounds like really a lot. Like I could put a lot of things under there. And I wonder if they're doing that purposefully. I don't know. It's just something that made me think. Like, right. And even sustainability is a good call out. Like if you're building a cannabis business for New York, sustainability is in the MRTA. One of the major pillars is sustainability, because we don't want to have a cannabis industry that hurts New York's environment. Right. So those were taken into consideration. And plus, we know cultivation, the lights are a lot of electricity. We know that there's some stressors on packaging being plastic and things like that. So I think this is an important call out in this section, that if you're building your business or you're thinking about having longevity in New York, sustainability needs to be part of your plan.
And sustainability isn't cheap.
No,
so I'm wondering if there is potential credits to the company for really pushing to be a sustainable business. Like I haven't heard like anything about LEED certifications, and I don't know if we're, I don't want to blow things out the water, but it is something that I would be curious, if we had the possibility of getting a benefit or a perk to building a sustainable company. That would be kind of cool.
I think that's a great point to put in the commentary. Okay, I'll spend the additional money on sustainability. Can I get some credit back? So that's number one. But number two, the other thing to know, just a cool piece of data, is that a consumer these days will be willing to spend 46% more at retail if they know your brand is sustainable. So that's just something people are moving towards sustainability. The sustainability market is something like trillions of dollars in the next, I don't know how many years. So this is something that the world is moving towards, and New York is, I think, doing a nice job of saying we're thinking about this too that's equitable too, because climate justice is part of equity justice.
Absolutely. All right.
We're still using the verbiage, applicant is of good moral character.
Okay.
What do y'all think about that?
Oh, then I'm out. Just send me home.
Well, they through there's things, like we were just talking about how there's some vague language in here, and I feel like that, And especially this, every time this shows up, this is like the OCM's get out of jail free card. It's like they could look at the application and say like, oh yeah, that's good, that's good, that's good, that's good. But something they don't want to hand the license over, they have this to get them out of it. Like they don't have like they,
Everyone's like, what determines moral?
Yeah,
What is
yeah,
moral?
yes. And also that I think it also like one of the missions, I think we're talking about decriminalization, right? So like that to me sounds like very oppressive verbiage.
yeah.
Like real like so what are you trying to say?
I mean, we set up, I mean, it's funny because when you think about it, we created an entire pathway for folks that are justice involved, and someone else might determine them not having moral character. So
Yeah.
it's really a weird dichotomy there. So
Right, and also like could it say a good community member, right? That feels more like inclusive, right? Or
Yeah.
I could get folks to like Beck nailed it. Thank you, Julie. Yeah, I could get folks to you know, write letters for me to say the impact I've had on my community. You know, like I just feel like we should really like push back on that a lot.
Because even in the earlier meeting that we're in, Pilar brought up a good point that like, you know, in certain situations, being behind on rent, especially if you're in public housing, is a big black mark on you. If you've been brought to housing court, like all these things are being weighed, and they're looking at, you know, when you're pulling your application, they're looking at your credit report. They're looking at your, you know, what brand toothpaste you're using. Like they're looking at everything.
and
There's
listen,
so many.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's
we have a lot of moms in our community right now that even post legalization, they have had CPS issues.
yeah.
So now does that make, you know, so we could bring up examples all day long, but that definitely is something because, you know, I know some women that I could call right now that have had issues with cannabis and CPS in a legal state. So if that, we need to define what moral character is.
Or I would just like strike it. Like
get rid of it.
Could this
Nice
be something
person. We
else?
need nice people.
Yeah. Is this, you know, like is this a contributing I don't know. Like there's so many other ways that we could I think that they could figure this out without saying like good moral character with some different criteria.
And we should say too that these applications are scored. So all of the things that they ask you for and all of the things that they require carry a certain points value.
There's a rubric, yeah.
And so like with card, they didn't release that. We found out what that was later because of the lawsuit from Michigan, but that's not a public released thing. That's, I mean, that could be something we could push for, you know, to make that public so people can kind of figure themselves out going into the application. How are you being scored?
All right, Nicole just got here. We're going to bring her up. Hello, Nicole.
Hi, ladies. Thanks for holding me down. Hello.
How was your class? I'm so down.
It was really good. It was very good. We got to meet a lot of OCM people and some of the AUCCL and AUCC people were logged on, and lots of excitement, lots of energy. It was good.
Oh, that's so cool.
That's so cool. Today, and we have to shout out today's the day of many firsts, right? Smack Village open. You guys started your mentorship class. We started this virtual session.
CWI tomorrow. Don't forget, I have to plug them because I love them.
CWI 7 to 9. I'm registered for that also.
Yep. Cannabis Workforce Initiatives, the NY Cannabis Workforce on Instagram. They have a course starting tomorrow. It's free. It's 10 weeks and it's more workforce development. Like we're doing for licensing. You know, we need people to work in our companies. You need people to work in your organization. So we get them trained. You pay a fair wage and elevate people up the ladder and we will have magic. You know what I mean? So definitely check out Cannabis Workforce Initiative for tomorrow's class.
And you get a certificate when you complete all 10 courses.
Yes.
And it's completely free.
So please do that. Please do that. It was built in so that we can get some free training. Okay. Back to back to the next section. Where are we?
120. So in 120, just the last couple of things. Licenses expire after 2 years, so there's a recertification process. And then, I just wrote, this is pretty straightforward, this section, just a lot of opportunity for interpretation on some of the verbiage I think is a little bit vague. And we just talked about that, like goods and services is a thing that like stands out in my mind. Goods and services, that covers a lot of things. And so I just think like we want to make sure that we point those things out, and it does require like, some just attention to detail here.
Absolutely.
So let's move into 121. Well, Nicole, do you want to like say anything else on 120? We just talked about.
We had a couple of questions coming in.
All right.
Hold on. Someone asked, will this recertification be using the same pricing structure?
Pricing structure.
Good question, but I'm going to assume
that's
yes.
a good question. I'm going to assume that there's probably fees again in the second, you get fees annually, I think, from what I understood in the reading of it. And so I think there would still be fees, yes, in that recertification.
And we had one other question, which we'll hit when we go over each license type. I would love if you were a little bit more specific, because that's a big answer. Yeah, so if you could be a little bit more specific about what license type you're talking about more specifically, then we can
one number of total licenses of each type. That was the question. Yeah, I don't think we know that right now.
Okay, cool. So if you have questions, please drop them in the chat. We definitely want to answer your questions. We're gonna move on to 121. Yes.
I will just say real quick before we move on to 121, just a little plug that I heard tonight was that they're expecting to open more licenses in the summer and fall, and that they're really encouraging everyone to tune into tomorrow's CCB meeting, because there's going to be a lot of new and exciting announcements, new staff hires, information on CMI neighborhoods and the data that's surrounding that. A lot of people have been waiting for that data to come out. So there'll be some announcements on that, and 33 new card licenses will be on the docket for approval.
I'm waiting for my dude in the Bronx. No.
Congratulations to those folks today. That was the other one.
That was another one. Yes.
This is a busy day.
I also want to just say, just before we move off of this like license renewal thing, that when you get approved for a license, the clock starts ticking on your 2 years. If it takes you 6 months, a year to open, that doesn't start your clock. Your clock starts from when you're approved. So put that date in your calendar.
CCB is the Cannabis Control Board. CCB is Cannabis Control Board. And just to say, I've held a professional license. I know Annette has held a professional license. I don't know if the other two ladies have. I had to renew my license every 2 years. I held a life insurance, life and health for 25 years. Every 2 years I had to renew it. I held a 6, 63, and 26 for 15 years. Every year I had to renew it. And it was easily $600 to $1,000 with CUs and continuing education and stuff like that. So, not saying that, you shouldn't have to renew your license or that you should or whatever. But professional licenses cost. If you were a hairstylist, you need a license. So just wanted to point that out. Okay, cool. You want to move on?
Sure. So we have part 121, social and economic equity. And this is a meaty section, and 121 talks a lot about the qualifications of a social equity applicant, ownership and sole control minimums, continuing duty to disclose and failure to disclose notification, the commitment to social and economic equity, as well as severability. So this continuing duty to disclose is about ownership, because one of the things around social equity applicants and partnership structures is that in order for it to be a social equity application or license, it has to be majority owned by that social equity applicant. So that's the thing to call out there. And then the other important conversation, and I want to have this conversation with all of us, is that this is really about the spirit of the MRTA as a law. This section is at the root of the MRTA and the intention of the law, a law that was meant to restore the harm and restoration of the communities that were disproportionately impacted by the enforcement of cannabis prohibition. And here are the qualifications to be a social equity applicant. So
Yes.
and you'll notice even in the regs and in the law, the way that these things were prioritized or the way that they were listed, and you'll hear folks from the OCM say this was intentional as well. An individual from a community disproportionately impacted by the enforcement of cannabis prohibition. And I want to stop here because I think this is a really important distinction, because what we all know based on the statistics and the factors of what happened in New York in our history around the war on drugs is that disproportionately impacted were Black and brown folks. And that the MRTA did not mention race, and I've had a lot of discussions about this, because the law wanted to avoid litigation as well, because that's what we've seen happen in a lot of other states. And so this terminology was really meant to capture a particular population of people. And when I say this, I mean folks like in Brownsville. I think Damien talked about going to Brownsville the other day, and people on the projects were like, we never seen anyone here.
I heard him
We
say
never
that.
seen anyone coming to tell us about anything. And he's like, well, I'm here now. And they're like, okay, let's beat you up, and tell you about all the things that we're, but the fact of the matter is that's what they're talking about. They're talking about areas like Washington Heights, where I'm from, where 30 years ago we had riots because of enforcement, and it wasn't just drug enforcement. There were all kinds of things happening, but this is like the real heart of who they're looking for in terms of equity, because to give these folks like Roland and his son the opportunity today is really a pathway to this collective determination for equity.
And what the OCM is doing right now to determine these communities that were disproportionately impacted is they're going back and sorting through all the arrest data from the last 30, 40 years and pinpointing them, connecting them to addresses, finding the areas where that happened, at what point of time, and that will qualify. So they've been working on this for a really long time. They're sorting through handwritten arrest records, and they'll be releasing this at some point as a report.
And I think one of the reasons for that is a lot of communities now have changed as far as the evolution of those communities. And to my son's father's from Bed-Stuy when it was do or die. And now Bed-Stuy is, I don't know, I can't think of anything that quick. But it literally has changed. So if at one point that would have been a highly policed area, and if you live in that community and have experienced the gentrification of your neighborhood, what would make it say? And that is why they have to go back into the crates, for lack of a better term, to find this information to make sure that that is that community. And those people that have lived in that community, they look how long you've lived there within a time frame. Did you just get there? Did you live there 10 plus years ago, 15 plus years ago, what have you?
Yeah, and they're asking for documentation around those things. And I think this really shows the due diligence to like having inclusion in this process, to ensuring that it's representative of New Yorkers, to ensuring that folks are getting access to generational wealth. Like there's so much baked into that one point, and then following these social equity criteria are a minority-owned business, a woman-owned business, a distressed farmer, a service-disabled veteran-owned business. And shout out to the veterans. I've seen articles about how veterans are feeling not represented enough in this process. I saw an article about how there's no veteran representation on the Cannabis Advisory Board. So just something to pin there. Like if there's veterans out there who are activists, it's time to like speak up and rally the community. I can't speak for veterans because I'm not a veteran, but I want to shout out there, if you're a veteran and you feel called and inspired, like now's your time to come out and like, rally the troops per se, to say like, okay, we want to be involved in this, and we have many veterans, obviously we know, that suffer from PTSD and are using cannabis as part of their wellness routine. So I just wanted to make sure that I highlighted that today.
Yeah.
And I just want to point out that that's a very narrow category for the veterans because it's service disabled.
It's disabled, yeah.
Yeah, you had to have gotten disabled within service. So if you come home with PTSD, you're not necessarily covered in that particular category. So that, please just recognize that that's a very tiny swath of.
That's a good point.
Well, even perhaps a place to comment too, like,
yeah.
Because
you're right. I didn't even think about that, Nicole. If you suffer PTSD once you're home, you weren't disabled in service.
Correct.
Right.
And I don't know if, technically you were, it's just the repercussion of it, but I don't know how.
The definition of a service disabled veteran is someone who is physically disabled during service.
We do have a person in our community, Dr. Jackie, who is a veteran representative. She does a lot. She's a certifying practitioner. So maybe next time we do some service, some veteran focused stuff, I'll pull her into the conversation. She's an incredible asset.
I definitely think it's Leo was one of the first activists I met, and like I just think about Leo
and Sarah up in Syracuse.
Yeah. So if there's folks out here, like I'd love to, we need to give them a platform because I think we've heard. I don't think we've heard enough from veterans in New York.
Agreed.
Yes, Mike, Jackie's amazing.
Yeah. And then, this goes on to in section 121, there's a determination whether an area is a community disproportionately impacted. And this speaks to what Beck was talking about. They could review geographic areas, precincts, zip codes, neighborhoods, political subdivisions, which I thought was interesting. Considering all the gerrymandering that's happened, and any other geographic area for the history of arrest, number of convictions, law enforcement procedures, protocols, and practices. So that's interesting because we know, like, the dirty 30 uptown, like there were definitely some things that happened that we could put down on paper. Allocation of law enforcement resources, economic and socioeconomic factors, and deportation records for marijuana offenses. And that's the actual word that's used in the regulations. So I always find it interesting when they use marijuana versus cannabis. And deportation, shout out to Carlene Pinto, who was the first person to put this in my head around deportations for cannabis. Yep. So that's another statistic that we should think about, particularly in an area like mine where so many people were sent back home, I think this section speaks a lot to, again, the spirit of the MRTA and what it's designed to do. And I'd love to hear what you guys think about anything else that stood out to you.
I'm excited about it. I think it is, listen, we've said it from the beginning that the MRTA is the most progressive legislation that we've got. And I like to see the fact that they're going to do their due diligence to me. Now, obviously, we're here to hold people accountable. We're going to be paying attention as well. But I love that the framework is there, that they're going to do their due diligence and make sure that this area is actually an area that was disproportionately impacted. We have a question. Does the individual have to be from that area, or do they just have to open their business in that neighborhood? Mm-hmm. Be from that neighborhood. Yeah. That we're trying to avoid folks coming into certain neighborhoods. So you want to, I feel like this is the opportunity for people to grow and build a business locally in their community. Like my dad's record store was 8 blocks from my house. You know what I mean? So, and he had an incredible business. You know what I mean? So someone said the renewals are expensive. You are going to be generating income, so
you're hopefully making a lot of money.
Yeah. So I pray you will lovingly give your renewal fees because you are going to be building a successful business, But anybody else?
Oh, no, sorry, Beck. I was just going to say along those lines that the profit margins in a legal cannabis business are very small. So a lot of people who might be in the legacy market and operating in the legacy market with a sort of a legacy business plan approach, it's not going to transfer over to a legal market because of the number of fees and the cost of compliance and taxes. And so the profit margins are quite small. So as you're setting up your operation, start small, grow incrementally, and think about in your business plan that don't base it on your current, especially if you're involved in the traditional market, don't base it on that. You have to think forward into what it's going to be like in a compliance, and it's a very tiny profit margins in legal cannabis.
And I was talking to somebody. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's a really good point about your business planning, because we see what has happened in other places where the price per pound has gone down to $500 and people were planning for higher cost per pound. So that's really important. But the other thing I'd call out as a retail operator is that you've got to balance your assortment too, to protect your profit margins, to know that, okay, there's going to be some things that I'm going to get a better gross margin on than actual flower or some of the cannabis products. So just think about, like, there's some things you can bring in, ancillary businesses, that might give you more cushion on the profit.
A well-rounded business. The goal is to build a well-rounded business. And keep in mind, we have 8 other licenses besides retail.
Yeah, like
so.
And I would just throw to folks out there that I think New York is going to be about experiences versus just the retail experience. So I'll just leave that there.
I'm a grower.
Right?
Listen, I talked to a grower the other day. I'm like, you doing farm tours? I can bring like 20 ladies up. You know, so I am literally like trying to find, you know, experiences, like you said, you know. So all right, so let's move on.
I think Beck had a comment though before we move.
Yeah, I just want to say, before we move on from this, the definitions of social equity and the, you know, sort of how they are qualifying social equity candidates, this was sort of the part that was making me the most nervous leading into the regulations, like, because I felt like, how are they going to define these areas? Are they really going to like get in there and target these areas right? How are they going to deal with gentrification? How are they, you know, but I think now that, you know, I've heard Damien speak, his team is really on it, and they're not half-assing this. This is really important to them. And they just released a few weeks ago the social equity report, which shows, you know, it breaks down the numbers of applicants and then the percentages of social equity candidates within those license types, and they're killing it. So that is really promising, that even in these early stages, even with things like, you know, the hemp farmers, I think there's a lot of people, you know, thinking that there's no social equity or diversity happening, and it's there, and that's just step one. So it's coming.
Small.
Yeah, but they're like,
to be fair, in that
they're moving, and I think every time they're like moving forward, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And
I hope so.
I feel good about them taking this very seriously.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's call it out. They're Black and brown regulators. Like, we got to start there. New York is setting a precedent and saying, okay, we're building an equity program, and then we're going to bring in regulators that look like the folks that we want to impact and that have had the experiences, like Tremaine. I mean, Dashita is not on the OCM, but part of Cannabis NYC. When we have somebody in the state saying can't stop, won't stop, that signifies like who we are. You know, like, so like,
you know what else is cool?
That's the part that always makes me feel good. It's like, yeah, we have real inclusion here in New York, real diversity, real inclusion, real conversation, real discourse, real. We keep it real. And I think that's why we're passionate. That's why we end up fighting sometimes. That's why we end up like, you know, in these heated conversations, but it's because we all want what's best for New York and what's best for our communities.
So I will say one thing that OCM has been doing these little roundtables also, where they're going to meet with community. And I honestly think that is cool. Like what Annette was saying earlier, I overheard Damien saying that they did one of these roundtables in Brooklyn, and people were literally saying like, no one comes to talk to us. No one asks us for our input. So it speaks volumes for me that they are taking the time to go into all of these communities that are really like where no one goes, you know, and having conversations about what do we need to do to have you participate in this space. You know, is it go get educated to be a worker in the space? Are you ready for entrepreneurship? I mean, I love these conversations.
Me too.
So are we staying on social equity, or are you moving on to?
We're moving on. The next section, the final section in the equity section that we're talking about is the commitment to social and economic equity. This actually also goes back to the intention of the MRTA and something that's, wow, like talk about commitment. Every licensed applicant has to have a commitment to social and economic equity in New York. And it's not just a commitment, you have to have a community impact plan that shows how you're going to benefit communities and individuals from communities that were disproportionately impacted by the enforcement of cannabis prohibition.
As part of your
as part of your business plan, as part of your application, you've got to have a plan that says, this is what I'm going to do as my commitment to social equity. For example, you might say, just to throw it out there, I'm going to give 10% of my profits to X organization in the community because we're focused on childhood enrichment or whatever. So just this, I love this, because this is here's where we're gonna see all the creativity, all the entrepreneurs and what their visions are for not only their businesses, but for the communities that they're living in, for the communities that they're doing business in. I get goosebumps talking about this because I think this is where we're gonna see real lights on in New York, because we're talking about, okay, so we have this commitment from business owners, from participants in this economy, and then it's reinforced by the 40% tax revenue that's coming out of this and going back to communities. So really good synergy, I think, here between what's on the OCM side and then what will be on the tax revenue side.
So, and I would just add that that's something to really bear in mind when you go to the dispensaries, and if you're going to the dispensaries to support all the people, is the taxes that you're paying. They're not small. 40% goes directly back into the CMI communities. 20% goes towards drug addiction, and the rest of it, I'm blanking on it. But
I have it, I think.
For education. And tell them what it is. But the point that I'm trying to make is that 100% of the taxes, they're not going to a slush fund. They're not going to some fund for, legislators to decide how they want to allocate it. It's already earmarked, and it's earmarked for the community, for drug rehab, and for education.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So someone asked me about the roundtables. I would follow the OCM because they've been doing listening sessions also. I think OCM is even doing workshops going over the regs soon. But it was these things that they were been advertising. So I would follow the OCM on social media, on Twitter,
You can sign up for alerts too. You can go to the website and sign up for OCM alerts. It'll come right into your email every time something happens. It'll let you know when the next Cannabis Control Board meeting is. The Cannabis Advisory Board meeting is also meeting tomorrow. Yeah. Those are the individuals that are going to be in charge of determining which projects get funded in that 40% CMI fund. So, and they're also there to provide advice and guidance to the CCB. So those are definitely important meetings to also pay attention to and watch.
100%.
And then the way the OCM, they did a presentation uptown, and one of the things I'd like to call out, they talked about social and economic equity in their presentation, and they used like 3 pillars almost, like record expungement, equity in the market, and community reinvestment were kind of working all together. And they talked about the tax revenue going back to the communities that were most harmed. And then also like that equity in the market going back to people that were impacted by cannabis prohibition, and the record expungement is automatically clearing the convictions. I mean, we got to talk about that too as part of social equity. Can't have folks selling something that people have been, wrongfully incarcerated for, so just the expungement piece is a really important part of the social equity program.
I'm trying to find the OCM's Instagram.
It's NYS
_.
Yeah.
NYS
_cannabis.
Perfect. Okay, cool.
All right. I mean, that's those are the highlights that I had from this section. I don't know if you guys want to chime in on the plan or
Right,
the
I'm late.
pillars.
Sorry.
I have something I want to mention on social equity. Were you getting ready to say something? Okay. So I just think one thing that we need to consider as we review social equity is how funds get allocated. You know, it's one thing to say that social equity is getting 50% of the licenses in the different license categories, but even under traditional businesses, the individuals from CMI neighborhoods have a battle in getting loans approved. So, and cannabis is even harder. So I think it's going to be incumbent on the state to actually provide resources for that cohort of people that are given licenses and to make sure that it's a level playing field. And when you send in your comments, I think that's an important thing to think about and to comment on. And also as how the state is going to interact with community boards. Some community boards are on top of it. They're paying attention. They're definitely protecting their communities in terms of making sure that things are safe. I know with home grow, there was issues with fires that the state wasn't considering, that the community boards are considering. But I also think that we don't want to see the community boards necessarily getting the ability to choose how those funds are allocated, because community boards decide what businesses come into those neighborhoods. And we're seeing gentrification in those neighborhoods. We're not seeing locals get the storefronts. We're not seeing locals get the apartments. So that, that's a broken system. That system is not functioning well. And it's not going to function any better just by giving them more money and saying that they now get to determine how that social equity fund is allocated. So I think that the state needs to start a whole new process to address this, because this process is broken, and throwing more money at it ain't going to fix it.
And I want to balance those comments out, because I know there's some really hardworking community folks, and I think community board folks don't come
Miriam.
Don't come for me.
Shout out, thanks you, Miriam.
I see you. She does some great work. Shout out to Miriam, because at least shout out to Miriam because she's a community board member that helped go write the MRTA, was an activist, so she could take that information back and make her community board smarter. I happen to be in a neighborhood. The community board is a little bit behind, and they're just starting their time.
Mine too, but it's always a good plug to go to those meetings, especially if you want to be part of that community.
But also to Nicole's point, it is kind of a broken system. When you show up at your community board meeting, you see who's there and who's making the decisions, and it's not the people in the hood. It's not the people that need the help. It's the people that vote for rezoning. It's the people that vote to let the Chick-fil-A, Popeyes, Kentucky Fried Chicken all be in the same place. So we just got to make sure that, to Nicole's point, that we're vigilant around that, and also send our commentary in that that's not necessarily going to be the best way to decide where these funds go, and maybe there needs to be some kind of development of the CCB too. Maybe there needs to be, or the Cannabis Advisory Board, the CAB. Maybe there needs to be some kind of development of that. And by the way, I think they've only met once so far because, there's nothing coming in. But as soon as this money starts rolling in, and as soon as the tax structure is not completely solidified, folks. So we can still comment on that too.
Yes.
Heads up.
So we had some questions. I want to drop the question. I may have missed it, but I have a record arrest for cannabis, but it got expunged. Does that still qualify me?
Yes.
Do you just have to you have the paperwork for the expungement? You just have that as part of your proof.
Yeah.
Okay. One other one.
Let me just say that. So the card portion of the Cannabis in New York program is, all those applications are done. That application period is over. But if you have convictions or arrests and you didn't get a card license, or you didn't apply for the card at the time, that stuff all goes towards your social equity standing and your impactedness. So that's all valid and part of your application.
Yeah.
Awesome. Here's the last one. Union relationships. Local 338 is our cannabis union for New York State right now. Hiring people from the community. CWI, Cannabis Workforce Initiative, to start equity at home. I agree.
Yes. I thank you for this, Christina. I think this is a really important point. I'm passionate about labor and wages and planning your businesses accordingly. I mean, we're not here. I don't think we're here to replicate businesses that are not equitable, right? So if you're hiring locally, you want to have jobs that pay living wages locally. Eggs right now are $10 a dozen uptown.
Put them in the safe.
Oh my God.
But they're go figure, they're $4.50 at Stu Leonard's in Yonkers.
That's very weird because
Someone explain that to me
in my neighborhood either.
Can someone please explain the egg situation?
To get cannabis, we need some eggs.
I need an egg breakdown.
Shout out to the chickens that are getting paid.
Hello. Oh my goodness.
Shout out to folks paying their rent bills with egg prices.
Listen. All right. So was there anything left to this? I'm going to put it back. I think that was the last part of that. But I did want to mention some references and say, I wanted to do this one real quick. Hold on. Let me put up Nicole's thing, because if you want the regs, you can go get the regs and get some framework to craft your response. You go to the New York Small Pharma website, NY Small Pharma with an F, not a PH.org, correct?
That is correct. NYSMALLFARMA. And then when you on the regulations tab, there's 2 drop downs, which you see here on the screen: a share your voice and a timetable. The timetable, you have to refresh the screen. There's a little link there. You can refresh it. This is what the timetable looks like. In the 3rd column is our comments that you can read. And then in the 4th column is the share your voice column that you can click right onto it, and it'll open up an email with our comments in the email. So you can either click send, you can remove the ones you don't agree with, you can add others in, you can add your own experiences as to why you agree with those comments, or you can just ship them off. Or you can start, if you go down to the bottom of the page, you can click another link and have a blank email. But we've tried to make commenting as easy as possible. Right now on our page is the marketing and labeling regs, which are due on the 30th, so just around the corner. So you can, they're at the revised, so they're unlikely to change substantially, but we have made some statements for the record on those marketing and labeling regulations. And you can read our comments, and you can also click the button and it'll populate an email from you to the regulators with the comments already filled out, and you can ship them off. And we encourage you to do so, because the more people that comment, the more that it can move the needle of change. And just keep checking back our page, because we're going to keep adding more of our comments and more links for you to be able to go forward. So right now we have our part 128 and 129, which is due on the 30th.
Perfect. And really good point, Nicole, around multiple. We should have tons of people sending the same comments. For instance, this good moral character shit that we called out today. Like if hundreds or thousands of people sent that comment in, what is this? What does this mean? Like we think this should be this. We think this should read this. They're gonna have to take a look at that and say, okay, we had like hundreds of comments on this one piece of verbiage. Now we have to respond to this. So the more people that comment on the same things, that's okay. Like just because you see one person commenting on it, or you see the list of comments, that's okay. Double down, triple down, whatever you want to do. There's power in numbers. There's power in like big groups saying like this is problematic.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So basically, Fran, basically that's what Nicole is saying. You don't have to really, you could just like hit click and send. If you want to add your own, you can edit the email, but it's great. It's to be able to click it, it populates an email, and you can just go.
No excuses.
No excuses. So that and what you said, good more character
needs to be out.
You know? Like,
and also,
it's crazy, but I can't define that. I can't define that, because in my past days.
Good moral character, somebody who kept the cannabis business alive during Prohibition.
Word.
Exactly.
We're doing this now, but we're on our respectful Instagram pages all the time. So you can, if you have a thought tomorrow and you want to ask us a question, like just hit us up.
I put all the socials here. I added yours, Nicole. So you could come back to all of us. If you have any questions, we will answer them. And honestly, if I can't answer it, I will send you to Nicole. No kidding.
And I'll write pages for you.
So that is exactly what I will do. I'm like, call Nicole. Or go on the New York Small Farmer website, and there's a lot of information there. Resources. Does anyone have any resources? Because we mentioned business plans a lot. Does anybody have any resources to help people move along? Because if we do have some time, like right now, I think what the comment period is February 13th. Then we'll get a new set of regs shortly thereafter. Then there's another 45-day period on that one, if I'm not mistaken.
If they get enough comments that they make substantial changes, they will release the regs in a revised format with the edits incorporated. If they don't get enough comments, or they don't feel that the comments are justified enough to make the changes, those regulations will move immediately to final rule, which is what we saw with the card licenses. Comments closed, and the next day they move to final rule.
Okay, so get to commenting.
That's why it's so important to send so many in.
Yeah.
If we're talking about business plans, there are like resources, and there's a lot of free resources. So you can go to places like the library has resources, the public library,
Small Business Association.
Cannabis
Small Business Association will not be super hands-on with the cannabis businesses because that's federally funded. You get help.
I'm working with an incubator out in Hudson River that is Hudson River Valley that is super hands-on.
And it's SBA?
Potentially not. As I want to out. No.
Because I went to SBA with a non-plant touching business. Kennedy was non-plant touching, and they were like, no. So honestly, if you listen, I don't want to tell people not to do stuff, but who has to know? You need a business plan.
Cannabis NYC Small Business Services is actually offering money. There's a grant out there right now for small business owners, but also they do have support for business plans. Your local
Business Opportunity Fund.
Yep, your local WD or whatever they're called. What are you?
WDI.
Yeah, your local WDI.
I got an email from Columbia. Columbia has a small business program. And they do a lot of free stuff. I just got an email yesterday that the Columbia Small Business Development Corp is doing things on a regular basis. They're doing like coaching. You can work with a consultant. There may be small micro grants that you can. Yeah, Kate does some work with the Hudson Valley Agribusiness Development Corp. I've done some work with them. They're amazing up in the Hudson Valley. PS is an event on Thursday at Hudson Valley with Melissa Gibson. If you're up in that neck of the woods, and not with us, but if you're not, you could go over there. But
everything will be recorded, so
everything will be recorded. Absolutely. So find your local orgs. I know the Harlem Business Alliance does some work. So look inside your community for your small business orgs and ask them for help. I mean, yes, what Annette said is great. With Dashita's org, the small business and New Cannabis NYC, there are going to be a lot of resources there. But there are a lot of resources.
It's also the beginning of the year. The budgets are fresh. So like now's the time to get the help.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's better to start now on your business plan. And I mean, I wouldn't purchase any facilities or necessarily license anything yet. But in terms of coming up with your concept and working on your business plan now, so that when the license is open, you're ready to go. You have your team. And the most important thing you can do is to pull your team together.
Yes.
Because each individual needs a team of people to help them. And then, Tanya and I and others are going to be covering cooperatives next week, and really collectively working together through cooperatives is going to be the future of New York cannabis, because what OCM is trying to do is create tons of small businesses and allow for locally thriving businesses. And in order for small businesses to be able to differentiate themselves and last in the market and create a dent in the market, it's going to be through cooperatives, so that you have a division of labor of what you do, so that you're not having to grow and brand.
Thank you for that, Nicole. I appreciate that. One question: does the license require you to have a location already?
It's you. I think it's a letter of intent. I think that you'll need one, but that's after approval. So once you get approved for a license, there's like a second part of the process where then you'll have to come back with additional documentation, and in that additional documentation will most likely need to be your letter of intent around your real estate.
Right. And so you have what's it called, the cured process. You have 30 days to address any missing documents or any missing problems before you are approved or potentially denied. And so during that period, you'll be able to fix anything that is missing or incomplete. And then I believe you have a period of time after you are given the license to be able to submit your site plan and other things. And if you don't do those things, you can lose a license, but they do give you opportunity so that you don't have to purchase land and then find out if you're going to get a license.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I think to the point that Nicole said earlier, like trying to be as ready. I mean, this is a fine balance, right? Like creating your team, having your plan, trying to be as ready, because what we're seeing in, like, just as an example, New Jersey, there's folks that are very close to losing licenses because they can't find real estate. So, like, again, super important to like, oh, we needed to have it before approval.
This is really what I wanted to put up. Other states were doing, and I don't know where you're from, Mike, but some other states were doing 25,000 non-refundable application fees. So thank you, New York.
Yes, thank you, New York.
Now, Mike, was that your experiences at AUCCL or from another state?
Yeah, Mike, chime in when you have a minute.
The license for AUCCL was like $2,000.
Yeah.
So I know it was another, like on the West Coast. If I'm not mistaken, it was Colorado when they first went AU, that the licenses were super high, non-refundable application fees. So some of the hustles are the states. So be mindful. I think we're really lucky here. Does anybody have any questions? I think we did pretty great.
Definitely paced well.
From Denver. Mike, if you want, I can make you some recommendations for attorneys. I think we all can. And then you have to do your own due diligence as far as who you'd like to work with. So that hit us up, but please do your due diligence and see who's a good fit for you. Not every attorney is a good fit for everybody.
Mike said he's from Denver.
He said he's from Denver, which makes sense, because Denver was doing that $25,000 application fee, and if you didn't get it, they were like, kept your money.
Right. Well, shout out to New York for letting New Yorkers own New York cannabis.
And to be fair, New York has the luxury of learning from everyone else's missteps in the other states, and so they've seen the problems that is created when you have to have your land in place while you're waiting to find out whether you get a license.
Yes, Mike. We all got New York State lawyers
who can
make recommendations.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think that's a good shout out too, that between the four of us, we have some really good resources. So if there's anything you're stuck on, we can direct you to folks that could help you. There's one of the beautiful things about this community is there's plenty of people available to help. There's plenty of people that'll answer a question, but you got to do your homework too. Come correct, come informed with the things that are already available to you, because we're here to help you, not to do for you.
That's right.
Mike, I'm going to be up in Buffalo in March. I love Buffalo. I love it. Rochester, Buffalo is my favorite outside of New York City.
Yeah, watch it now. The Bronx is listening, Tanya. The Bronx.
I know, right? You see me, I'm like, don't get scared.
Tanya, thank you so much for organizing this and being
my pleasure. My absolute pleasure. Thank you for doing this, because I would be really bad if I was here by myself. I'd probably be here literally by myself. I don't see any questions, so I think we're good. Keep in mind, you can email, DM is probably easier, but I'm Tanya at the Canadiva. I know Nicole is Nicole at New York Small Pharma. You could DM everyone, slide into our DMs, just be nice. And we're going to be back on Thursday.
Mhm.
Thursday is when we're doing retail and processing.
We're gonna dig
Yeah.
deeper into the regs.
We're gonna bring a shovel.
Yeah,
Yep.
That's how
we're
deep
digging.
we're going.
We're bringing experts in.
Yeah,
That's what you want to
it is
tee up.
definitely
Do you
gonna
want
be
to tee
fun.
up who you're bringing in, Beck, or?
Yeah, so I'm gonna break it down and we'll post this, starting as soon as this is over. We're gonna do processing from 7 to 8 and retail from 8 to 9. And then why are you guys laughing at me?
Because that's funny. You said right after this is over. Like the work doesn't stop.
Yeah,
She's
no.
like, when I get off here, I'm going to be doing my notes until Thursday when we come online.
Yeah. And then so 7 to 8 processing, 8 to 9. I have Glenna coming in to talk with me about processing, and then my pizza's here, and then I'm gonna have
I'm literally yelling to go feed the dog. Like, somebody feed the dog.
Naomi from Noob. She's a card licensee from the Bronx. She's coming to talk about retail. So it's going to be a lot of information. Can you buzz in the pizza?
Listen, let me tell you something about mom life. Mom life, caregiver life. This is real.
Nonstop.
This is real. You know.
And also, like, a shout out to Tanya too, who was emailing me at 3 a.m. this morning. So she was up late preparing this, and everybody in this community, us included. There's a lot of love that goes into this. We hope you find these helpful. We really want to help people. This was a good overview, but we are really going to start digging deep into these regs and breaking them down for you. I'm going to be doing cultivation on Tuesday, 131, Tuesday, January 31st, cultivation, micro license, and nurseries.
Right. And then on the following Thursday, me and Nicole and everybody, if you please join in, are doing delivery, co-op, and transportation.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to hit them all. And I'm excited that everyone's here. The links live in each of our bios. Like, if you go on each of our respective link trees, you could sign up for all of the sessions. Again, Tuesday, Thursday. So next Thursday, and then Tuesday, Thursday after that. Feel free to, drop us a note if you have any questions. I don't see any more questions in the chat. Everyone's just saying thank you, thank you. I guess that's it, ladies, right? Are we done?
And we're going to be posting the recordings of these on our YouTube channels, and we'll probably be breaking down little tidbits, especially for when we have our guests come on social for you guys. So
absolutely,
keep rolling out the education.
All right, everyone, have a great rest of your night.
Have a good night, everybody.
And we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks,
everyone.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.